If you're interested in what I look like in real life and want to learn more about me, then follow my Instagram page at Joe the Insomniak. This incident happened to me last year on Halloween. My little brother and I were home alone since our parents had gone out to a Halloween party. They tasked us with handing out candy to trick-or-treaters. This won my brother and I out because we had made plans to go trick-or-treating with a few friends. Our parents told us that we were too old to be still trick-or-treating and that we could instead invite our friends over to hang out there. My friends declined my invitations because they still wanted to go out trick-or-treating, so that left me home alone with my brother handing out candy. A lot of people stopped by our home. By 10, almost all the candy was gone. My brother and I decided that we'd eat the rest. We were sitting on the couch, watching a movie, stuffing ourselves with candy, when there's a lock on the door. I storm off the couch, wondering who the hell could be knocking at our door this late. I assumed that it was just some late night trick-or-treaters. Even if that was the case, I had turned the porch light and Halloween decorations off, which should have been a dead giveaway that we're out of candy or that we're not home. So I assume it's my parents. Being cautious, I look through the peephole, seeing a suspicious man standing on our porch. He's wearing a black hoodie with the hood over his head, making it difficult to see his face. The only detail of his face I could spot was that he had a beard and dry lips. There was no way that this guy was a trick-or-treater because he wasn't wearing a costume and was far too old to be trick-or-treating alone. His hands were stuffed in the front pocket of his hoodie. He looks very thin. Every single red flag went off when I saw this guy. There's no way in hell I'm ever opening the door to him. Still looking through the peephole, I watched as he knocked on the door again. He seemed desperate for us to open the door and was shaking a bit. It wasn't even cold outside. Definitely not enough for someone to be trembling. He was giving me a bad vibe, and I wanted to get rid of him ASAP. We're out of candy, I shout. I watch as a smile spread across his face. It wasn't a friendly smile either. "Are you in there alone?" the man said, almost in a mocking voice. "Should I call the police?" my little brother said to me quietly, gripping his cell phone. The man let out a low grumble. "Sounds like you're alone in there." I continue to watch him through the peephole. His hands are welded tightly in his pocket. He's now shaking a bit. I began to wonder if he's armed. I decided to go take action, speaking in the most intimidating voice I can. "Get away, or I'm calling the cops." His smile faded. His bare teeth show. They're yellow. I concluded that he's probably some homeless crackhead. He had a full plastery, fury look on his face. Fortunately, he left without trying to break in, probably because he knew I wasn't messing around. I didn't stop watching through the peephole until I saw him completely off our property. My brother and I then breathed a sigh of relief and decided not to call the police. My brother and I were a bit paranoid after watching TV until our parents came home. We didn't tell them about the man, since he hadn't really tried to harm us. Now when I think back to this, I wish we called the police because maybe we would have been able to prevent a murder. You see, the next day, we found out that the elderly woman who lived a few houses down from us was brutally murdered. Her neighbour found her lying on her front porch covered in blood after being stabbed multiple times in the chest and neck. My brother and I immediately knew who did it and told the police what we could. They couldn't have got too much information from what we given, since we had not seen many details of his face. They went on the hunt for the man, but never caught him. I blame myself for that lady's murder, because I could have prevented it. I think the most disturbing thing of all is the fact that he didn't take anything from the house. He left the house untouched. He could have easily went in, taken whatever with the doors wide open. He only wanted to kill. That was his only intention. At the time, I lived with my parents, younger brother, older stepbrother and cousin in a big, old house that sat on a main street. Behind it ran an alleyway flanked by apartments. It also had a huge yard that my basement bedroom looked out onto. We lived in a small town. Crime seemed minimal in the area, and I'd made my way out that Halloween night to make best and my favourite day of the year. It wasn't just what happened that night, though. It was, of course, what came after, and one small incident that came before. A few days before Halloween, my stepbrother and cousin arrived home to discover a pickup truck full of dudes taking photos of our home. Weird, but when approached, the man seemed really friendly, complimenting our Halloween setup. It was pretty great. That is true. The man sped off without incident and was quickly forgotten. My stepbrother and cousin re-entered the story Halloween night, the big event itself. At about 3 AM, both had been out drinking with their friends, and as such, both left their respective vehicles and braved the icy walk home on their own. My cousin arrived home first, but couldn't seem to get his keys in the lock, sitting on the porch waiting for the other to show up. He did, about half an hour later. After having a bit of a laugh at my cousin of being an uncoordinated idiot, he went to unlock the door himself. No luck. So they bit the bullet and called my mum, waking her up in the process. She, unimpressed, began opening the door for a pair of drunk idiots, and didn't buy their story about the wonky lock. They insisted, though, and to shut them up, she finally relented and tried her key. She too could not get her key in the lock. Annoyed, tired, confused, she wrote it off as a problem for tomorrow, and the three of them hit their retrospective hay. One other person arrived home that night. Me, though I arrived much earlier than those two, and was in bed by about midnight. I woke up close to 1 AM, still tired. All I could feel was anxiety, and I didn't know why. At first I tried to tell myself that I'd just gotten a bit too into the holiday spirit, psyching myself out, but then I noticed a shadow. It was perfectly man-shaped and cast upon my window. I turned on my bedside lamp, blinked. It's gone. It wasn't unusual, mind you, to see shadows of people harmlessly walking through the alley. That's what I thought at the time. Then there's what happened after. I came home from school the next day. My parents were there. So was the locksmith and the police. My parents were there because that's where they'd lived. The locksmith was there because my mum called him in. As a confusion over who broke the lock persisted, the cops were there because the locksmith and my parents had called them. When the locksmith proceeded to pull a knife out of the ground and the tip of a broken key in our lock, it's a look on my mum's face I'll never forget. The screens on our windows had also been slashed too. When I was 13, my best friend, Lisa, lived in a very rural, woodsy area. There wasn't a lot to do, but it was a blast to explore and fall. Maybe a 15 or 20-minute walk away, which was relatively short by golf cart, our primary means of travel. Now, there was this old, rotting house that had been uninhabited since before either of us were born. My mum's friend knew the guy who used to live there, just an elderly man who passed away, either from heart attack or old age, or something completely not scary. But the house is run down, filled with holes, having broken windows, and a spooky basement that was never completely emptied out. So it was fun for us 13-year-olds to get into and explore. We would tell scary stories and try to find ghosts or whatever. So one day around Halloween, we take the golf cart and drive down the house to do some exploring and creep ourselves out. We turn down the long driveway to the home, parking off to the side of the home, on the off chance if anyone came down, they wouldn't see us there. So we're trying to get all of our gear together. We'd often take backpacks and cameras with us when exploring. When Lisa suddenly stops talking, I look up to see what she's doing, realizing she was staring at a guy standing in the doorway watching us. He looks maybe 5 or so years older than we are, pretty normal looking, but smiling. It's not like we've never seen other people at the home. The occasional other groups of teens running around is normal. But this is the first time I remembered feeling so uncomfortable. We both had our attention as he calls out, "There's a party in the basement. It's $5 to get in. I was like, the hell? There's no cars around, no kids lingering outside, no noise, no indication that anyone else was there but us. Also, the basement was dark and trashed and smelled terrible. I had been in there before. There was absolutely no way a party would be feasible. Lisa said something along the lines of, "That's fine, we're just leaving," and the guy responds, "I was just kidding, it's free to get in. How old are you?" I have no idea why, but Lisa got out the cart and started walking to the door. I was like, hell no, I'm good right here. Now she looked as though she was trying to see inside the door without getting too close, but he was leaning in the doorway. I was still sitting in the cart like, "Lisa, let's go." But they're both ignoring me. Then I noticed somebody in the window directly in front of the cart, not even trying to be discreet, with their fingers on their lips like they're telling me to be quiet. Then the guy in the window starts dancing. He was swaying and chomping his teeth. It's the most weird thing I've ever seen to this day. So I yell, "Lisa, I have to pee. We need to go or I'm leaving because I have to pee." And I guess she sensed my urgency because she stops talking to the guy in the door, walking back to the cart. She then tells the guy that we'll be back in 15 minutes and wave goodbye. The window person stops dancing when Lisa walks back to the cart and was now looking towards the door at his friend. I'm happy to say that we arrived safely home, but I freely admit that I was crying my eyes out trying to explain what I saw. I told her that I was never ever going back there again. I'm 13 now, so this happened 5 years ago when I was 8. It was Halloween, and every year we got to my grandparents' house. My uncle, who was 14, was taking me and some of my cousins trick-or-treating. It was dark, but there were people outside waiting on the firework display. We trick-or-treated here every year, so we know the neighborhood. Everything was going normal, but I was older this year and wanted more candy, so we decided to go to another neighborhood we never went before. We first went to this old couple's house and were joking around. My uncle was chasing us and I fell. My knee started bleeding. I thought there's a lot of blood, but I was 8, so probably being dramatic. So I wanted to go back to my grandparents' house to get a band-aid. My uncle was going to take everyone back with me, but I had told him that it wasn't that far. I can just go back. And I'm the oldest cousin there, so I didn't want to be treated like a baby. When I turned around the corner of the street, there was a man walking alone, coming towards me. He appears pretty normal, so I'm not really scared by him. He stopped in front of me. Now immediately I can tell that something's off about this. He said, "What am I doing out here alone?" seeming friendly. I told him I was going back to my grandma's because I cut my knee from trick-or-treating. He said his home was right down the street. he could fix me up easily in a couple of minutes, and I could go back to trick-or-treating again. I thought this was a good idea, because my mum and dad might not let me out again if they knew we were messing around and I got hurt. So I was stupid and decided to go with him. When we got back to his home, he got me a drink and a band-aid, and I was sitting on the couch. He came and sat really close to me, and I started to get scared because he was acting weird now, not talking much. He put his hand on my leg and started moving it around. I just jumped up and went to run out, but he grabs my arm and pulls me back hard. I started crying, telling him to let me go, but he just started acting friendly again, asking why I wanted to leave already. I didn't know what to do and sort of just froze. Just stayed there because there was nothing else I could do really. Now time passed, and I guess I was there longer than I thought, because I heard my uncle shouting my name from the street, so he must have gone back to my grandparents' house and realised I wasn't there. The windows were open, so it's pretty loud. I jumped up again, and the man saw my reaction and realised it was someone looking for me. I ran out the door this time. I told my uncle, and we both ran back to my grandparents' house, and my dad called the police. I was too young then, so my parents didn't tell me that the guy was actually a registered sex offender. This happened in 2001. I was 7. Now my mum helped me remember this one. It was freezing, probably within the 20 to 30 degree range. I was hell-bent on going out anyway. Now I wanted my pillowcase to be full of sweets. I got dressed as a cat. Not too hard to imagine. Now at the time, I had zero idea, but my rockstar mum was on it. My mum noticed a very tall man dressed in black. My mum said he had jeans on, a black trench coat and a black hockey mask. He had no kids with him, so that's a huge red flag. But he did have a pumpkin basket to put candy in. He followed us around, house to house. Always stayed back 3 or 4 houses according to my mum. After 20 minutes or so, she shrugged it off, thinking that it was just some really tall kid trick-or-treating. But the more she said she kept shrugging it off, the more uneasy she felt. Now I do remember my pillowcase was only half full, and my mum hurrying us home, me being super annoyed about it. I do not, however, remember my mum putting the house on lockdown after we got in the front door. I ate some candy and went to bed. My mum lays next to me. Now, this is where my mum really helped me out with the story, as I have no idea of what happened at the time. Fast forward to the following morning. There was a pumpkin basket full of candy with a note that said meow in chicken scratch on our front porch right outside of the front door. My mum threw out the candy in case it is tampered with and burned up the note. Now that creeps me out, but what's more creepy is that she woke up in the middle of the night to go and recheck the home, looked out the window and saw him in our front lawn, staring at the home with the pumpkin basket in his hand. She didn't think that he notices her. She called the police immediately, briefs the officer on what happened. The officer said he'd do a few rounds and patrol the area. My mum never heard back from the officer that night.